What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of TSC News here to review WWE TLC Tables, Ladders, and Chairs 2009. Now, the first official WWE TLC match was established at SummerSlam 2000. Technically, WrestleMania 2000 because it involved tables, ladders, and chairs with Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, as well as the Hardys. But SummerSlam 2000 was the home of the very first official WWE TLC match. And many years later, 9 years later, we had on December 13th, 2009, the first ever themed TLC pay-per-view. Now, this show took place at the AT&T Center in San Antonio, Texas, home of the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, as well as the multiple-time NBA champion San Antonio Spurs. And there were some new champions crowned that night. Now, as you'll see in a lot of our WWE TLC reviews, these pay-per-views feature some promising young talent that unfortunately just never got above this level. They got to a certain level, mid-card, upper mid-card, but for whatever reason, never made it over the top, no matter what gold they had around their waist. So let's not waste any time. Let's go through these results. First off, a little bit of a trivia note here. Believe it or not, the dark match for this pay-per-view was R-Truth versus CM Punk. Keep in mind, CM Punk had been World Heavyweight Champion just 2 months prior to this, dropping the title to The Undertaker inside a Hell in a Cell match in the opener of all things. I was actually in attendance for that pay-per-view. It was around this time I think CM Punk had heat because he didn't want to abide by the dress code. He felt like a guy in his position with his gimmick doesn't need to wear dress clothes. You can make the argument that wrestlers shouldn't have to wear dress clothes when traveling anyway because traveling is a pain in the ass enough. Taking bumps along with it, yeah, I can see where he's coming from, but I guess he was getting punished here because believe it or not, R-Truth beat CM Punk. Now, it was a dark match, but just, if you're wondering where he got some ammunition for that pipe bomb promo a couple years later, this may be part of it. Okay, in the opener of the pay-per-view, we had Christian, who was at the time the ECW champion when the ECW brand was a thing. He defeated Shelton Benjamin in a ladder match to retain the title. Pretty good match. A little tame by WWE ladder match standards, especially given who was involved. Shelton Benjamin, the MVP of the early Money in the Bank ladder matches, although he unfortunately never won. And Christian, who was featured in the very first Money in the Bank ladder match. And, of course, the WWE TLC matches. I think it was actually in the first, if I'm not mistaken, I think the first 4 TLC matches Christian was featured in. And if you count the WrestleMania 2000 one, that's 5. I believe he also was in the first ever tag team ladder match. Yeah, actually, I think, it was him and Edge against the Hardys in the first ever tag team ladder match in WWE history. So, man, yeah, he's certainly had a career involving ladders, made a name for himself in ladder matches. He was no stranger to ladder matches here, and he retained the title. The one notable thing is, I believe it was Christian who cut himself. And this was at the time when WWE was really starting to get really, really PG, which, nothing wrong with that. But PG was used as an excuse to stop a match in the middle when there's drama to clean up a cut or whatnot. And you can make the argument it's important to. Around this time, I'd say it was a little overboard. You know what I mean? People were chanting, "We want blood, we want blood." That was a little sadistic. Kind of killed the momentum of the match a bit, in my humble opinion. But hey, it was all right. Christian got the win. Would have been nice to see Shelton get the title, but at the end of the day, the ECW title really didn't mean much. It ended up going to Ezekiel Jackson, of all people, which is just, I don't know. And my cat, I think my cat just sneezed. So when I said Ezekiel Jackson, so that's all you need to know about the ECW brand, according to Fred's cat. We had Drew McIntyre, who had only debuted on the main roster a couple months back. He technically debuted, I think, 2 or 3 years prior, but then went back to developmental. So this was his first real main roster run, prolonged main roster run. He defeated John Morrison to win the Intercontinental Championship. Decent match. I want to say it was great. Drew McIntyre is way, way better than he was back in the day. Unfortunately, Poor guy at this time is no longer with WWE, was turned into a comedy character, and he was pushed way too hard, way too soon. It would have been nice to keep the title on him for a while. He eventually lost it to Kofi Kingston. He actually had a pretty good storyline with Teddy Long, who was the SmackDown general manager at the time, because Drew McIntyre was Vince McMahon's chosen one. I really feel like they could have protected this guy over time, and he would have eventually gotten over. But they gave up on him for a myriad of reasons, including the fact that he got into a hotel scuffle with his wife at the time, Taryn Terrell, a.k.a. former ECW general manager Tiffany. And, well, that was the beginning of the end for him, which is very, very unfortunate. As for his career highlights after that, not many. A member of 3MB, and he went on to have one of the most forgettable tag team title runs in history with Cody Rhodes. I kid you not. I kid you not. Michelle McCool defeated Mickie James to retain the WWE Women's title. This was a match. Given who was involved, it could have been better. But at the time, the Divas weren't getting a whole lot of time. I think this went like 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes, which was unfortunate. They probably could have had a hell of a match, but unfortunately, this entire feud was marred by this awful, tasteless Piggy James storyline, which was, I guess was WWE's way of telling Mickie James, hey, you're a little too thick, which, yeah, pretty disgusting. Not as disgusting as, say, Charlotte and Paige bringing up Reed Flair, but this was pretty disgusting. Speaking of disgusting, these days, people find the idea of Sheamus as a WWE World Heavyweight Champion disgusting, or as Becky Lynch would say, disgusting. Well, in 2009, Sheamus was an up-and-comer. Called up from FCW, had a nice little run in FCW and then ECW, and then he got to Raw. Became number one contender, took out Jamie Noble, put Mark Cuban through a table. Yes, that Mark Cuban. And then came the title match with John Cena. And believe it or not, in Sheamus' singles match pay-per-view debut, Sheamus O'Shaughnessy defeated John Cena to win the WWE Championship. And if you want to know my reaction at the time, and many fans' reactions at the time, it was this. We were all stunned. We were all shocked. And then, it was all downhill from there. Nothing against Sheamus. You can make the argument after 6 years, and at the time I'm recording this, it's December 2015. You can make the argument after 6 years that Sheamus simply doesn't have it, which is true. He doesn't have what CM Punk has, what Daniel Bryan has, what John Cena has, what to a lesser extent Randy Orton has. He does not have that whatsoever. But even back in 2009, Sheamus was pretty good in the ring. Sheamus had a good stage presence. And Sheamus, at that time, most importantly, was fresh, was new, wasn't bogged down by stupid comedy. He was a guy with momentum. And he beat John Cena for the WWE Championship. And by the way, for those wondering, yes, he beat him for that hideously ugly spinner belt. But whatever, that's another story for another day. Unfortunately, the way he won was very fluky. You see, John Cena and Sheamus were on the top rope. Cena slipped, went through the table. Sheamus won. On top of that, Sheamus won in the middle of the show. In the middle of the card. It wasn't the main event. Even though it was pushed as the main event. Maybe WWE felt that, oh man, we want to send the fans home happy. We should end it with DX in a TLC match. I get that, but man, it would have been a great ending to see Sheamus standing tall over John Cena. Now, why did I say after Sheamus beat Cena for the title that it went all downhill from there? I mean, we know now that Sheamus essentially is a glorified mid-carder, although he's cast as a main eventer. Miscast as a main eventer. But at the time, he had momentum. So how did they follow it up? If I recall correctly, his first appearance the next night was on the Slammy Awards. Just in the middle of the show. I think that was actually a 3-hour Raw before the 3-hour Raws were a regular thing. Appeared in the middle of the show, cut a promo, Nobody cared. That was that. Then he had a feud with Randy Orton, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to get a big win over Randy Orton. If I recall correctly, he lost to Randy Orton via disqualification and got destroyed at the end of the match. Then the next month, he defended the title inside the Elimination Chamber just 1 month before WrestleMania 26. What happens to Sheamus? He loses to John Cena. What happens after that? He goes up against Triple H, and you would think, oh man, Sheamus, this young up-and-comer, is going to get this big win. No, he loses to Triple H. Then, a couple months later, he beats Triple H in a match that featured a ton of tomfoolery and backstage attacks and whatever. It was just a mess. It was like they had to shoot Triple H with a musket just for him to put Sheamus over. And that's their guy, by the way. It's not like they were forced to push Sheamus. They really wanted to push Sheamus. They have a weird idea of pushing people, I guess. Case in point, Roman Reigns. Then he became King of the Ring, became a complete joke, went on an epic losing streak, and eventually they decided to try to rebuild him, make him world champion in 2012, defeating Daniel Bryan in a few seconds. And, well, the rest is history. While he became a reliable performer who had a lot of really good hard-hitting matches, sometimes too hard-hitting, as he was the guy that apparently injured Daniel Bryan. And, of course, Daniel Bryan's currently out right now, which sucks. But he never, ever rose to that level that they thought he would rise up to, which would be, the John Cena and, to a lesser extent, Randy Orton level. A large part of it is the guy, for sure. But WWE booking, particularly early in his career, did him no favors. And as we saw with Drew McIntyre throughout the rest of his WWE career, perception is reality. And when you book a guy like a geek, okay, no matter what title is around his waist, fans are going to perceive him as a geek. And it is very hard, unless you are a once-in-a-generation talent like CM Punk or Daniel Bryan, to overcome that. And unfortunately for Sheamus, he never quite overcame that. We had The Undertaker successfully defend the World Heavyweight Championship against Batista in a chairs match. This was okay, but this was nowhere near the level of their great matches in 2007. That's for sure. If you guys want to actually see some great Undertaker-Batista matches, go out of your way to see the WrestleMania 23 match, which I think is one of the most underrated matches in history. Not just WrestleMania in history, but in history. It was a great match. And it actually started the streak of Undertaker having kick-ass matches at WrestleMania. And I believe they wrestled once more. I think it was Cyber Sunday 2008. Or excuse me, Cyber Sunday 2007. Check that one out as well. Those are two kick-ass matches. Speaking of young stars who never rose to a certain level, Randy Orton defeated Kofi Kingston, who was on the run of his career. He had trashed Randy Orton's NASCAR, poured paint all over it, gave Randy Orton the boom drop through a table in Madison Square Garden. He had all this momentum, and for some strange reason, they beat him here. They beat him here. I'm still mind-boggled by this. And Kofi's another one. Really talented performer. A guy that, maybe doesn't have, the it factor, so to speak. But he's somebody that if he was protected and had some momentum early in his career and remained protected, he could have been a viable, maybe not main eventer, but upper mid-carder. And maybe a main eventer as well. Not everybody has to be a John Cena level main eventer. It's okay to have guys that are just a little bit underneath John Cena, maybe a lot underneath John Cena. You want to mix it up. You want multiple guys that are over to headline house shows, to headline pay-per-views, to do public appearances, etc. And while Kofi's kind of revived his career with the New Day, he still has come nowhere close to where he was at in late 2009. He was coming off the heels of a gigantic win at Survivor Series. It was his team against Randy Orton's team. And he pinned CM Punk and Randy Orton in a matter of, I think, 10 or 15 seconds. It was crazy. I believe McCool even said a star is born. And then that star lost to Randy Orton in an uneventful match. Then he lost again to Randy Orton on some random episode of Raw. And, well, they never tried again to seriously push Kofi Kingston. He may have had some cool spots in the Royal Rumble years later. He may have had some cool spots in Money in the Bank ladder matches. He may have even been in the Elimination Chamber a couple times where, guys like Kofi and Drew McIntyre, and Wade Barrett occasionally get that pay-per-view main event slot because it's a multi-man match. But yeah, he never came close, and it is quite a shame. Quite a shame. We had our main event, which was D-Generation X, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, defeating Chris Jericho and The Big Show to win the unified WWE Tag Team titles inside a TLC match. This was really good. Went a little too long for my liking, considering the fact that 2 out of the 4 guys aren't exactly ladder match guys, that being Triple H and The Big Show. But Jericho had a nice long run. They were very entertaining. Chris Jericho was on full WWE MVP status at this point. I mean, the guy had an incredible run in 2008 as a heel. He revitalized the Intercontinental title with Rey Mysterio earlier that year. And then to revitalize the tag titles as well. Whew. Yeah, this guy was on a major roll. So overall, a very, very noteworthy first WWE TLC pay-per-view. We had 2 titles change hands. Actually, 3 titles change hands. We had Drew McIntyre beating John Morrison for his lone IC title. We had DX defeating Jericho for the tag titles. And we had Sheamus in a gigantic upset winning the WWE World title. Were you at TLC? Did you watch this pay-per-view at that time? Did you go back and watch on the network? Are you interested in going back and watching it on WWE Network? Let me know. Leave a comment below. Tweet us, Facebook us, do what you got to do. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. Please share this with all your friends. Please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. Until next time, everybody, as always, enjoy the matches and stay tuned for more WWE TLC pay-per-view reviews.